Disney is not what it used to be. Recently, the stock fell to 10-year lows. They laid off 7,000 employees, and Disney CEO Bob Iger recently got called out to be fired by Elon Musk. But I wanted to make this story because you will be shocked by a story in Disney's history. The invention which came out of Disney's most turbulent time in history, Disneyland. Yes, it's one of those monuments that we take granted for today, but it had some serious opposition, unreal opposition as an idea. Now, let me get into it. Walt Disney was just a guy with a bee in his bonnet, fixated on an idea. He was fixated on an idea of building the biggest, greatest theme park on Earth, the happiest place on Earth. But Disney and his whole board were against him. Totally against the idea. They weren't having none of it. Because the year was 1952 and Disney had been rocked by World War II. They were making losses the years prior, and by 1950 they had turned a net profit of just $720,000. Disneyland, it would cost $10 to $20 million to make. What am I doing? Building it would risk the entire company. Notice my hand movements? Risk. Disney had already made film classics like Snow White, Fantasia, and they had that whole Mickey Mouse character, which was a cultural phenomenon. So by any stretch of the imagination, Disney was already a success. Why risk the enterprise? Walt Disney was 51 years old at this time. He should just retire, lay on the beach. Disney would come back, right? Just let it make a profit for the post-war period and make shareholders and everyone on the board happy. But he had an unwavering persistence to make this happen. And he focused on raising the money for the park. But with his board and banks and seemingly everyone against him, how could he? Well, the next part shocked me. And for anyone building a business, raising money, whoa, these three things he did, they will probably shock you. Let me get into those three things. Number one was the formation of WED Enterprises. Firstly, Walt needed a vehicle to make this Disneyland thing a reality, and he wasn't going to do it in the now corporate Disney, which had a board, shareholders, everyone to appease. WED actually stood for Walt Elias Disney, so it's just short for his initials. And honestly, already at this time, he was sick of corporate Disney. He felt like he was powerless, didn't have much control, and very importantly, didn't have the creative freedom to just go make his dreams reality. So he brought in a small team of his best guys, and all the money that could be used with his name and his likeness could be attributed as revenue to WED. Number two was his own investment. Walt proceeded to invest about $50,000 of his own money into WED. Now, we are talking $1950, so this is quite substantial still. Let me do the math on what $50,000 in 1952 would be worth today. And yeah, with inflation, that would be around $580,000 today. And by the way, he borrowed this money against his own life insurance. So that is belief right there. His wife was actually really angry about this. She was complaining if the project had flopped and something had happened to him, well, she'd have nothing. So he sold a home that he had just bought and put the other home that was remaining into his wife's name, so if anything did happen, well, she'd have some security. This really showed investors that he was all in and that he was not ready to give up his vision for anything. He was all in. But lastly, and for me, the best idea was this, the Disneyland TV show. Now, this was a stroke of genius, completely out of the box thinking. He marketed the idea of Disneyland to television networks. So hear me out on this. At the time, the TV networks were highly competitive, and they needed programming that would help them stand out. And ABC was one of those that was struggling to retain viewers. So Walt got around the table with the ABC executives and pitched them the idea of a weekly aired Disneyland TV show. And most importantly, they'd produce this show in exchange for investment into the park. ABC were very skeptical at first, but with a bit of convincing, they decided to make the deal. And ABC ended up committing around $7 million into the project in exchange for 34% of the park. Three crazy ideas. Now, you guys may all know the story of what happened next, so I won't get too much into it, but Disneyland opened way over budget, and it turned out to be obviously a roaring success. It was profitable literally from day one, making tons and tons of money. Everyone just wanted to go to Disneyland, and everyone won in the end. ABC sold their 34% ownership of Disneyland 8 years later for a pretty significant profit, and the Disneyland TV show ended up running for 29 seasons. It evolved into different names and such, but it went for a long time. And Walt Disney funded his dream. Growing up as a kid in Australia, I'd watch the Disney Channel come on, and I'd see this stuff about Disneyland and the theme parks, and I was like, wow, this looks like heaven. I'd love to go there. Eventually I did, and now it is a modern day cultural mecca. For my own company, we've raised about $500,000 so far, and when you're doing funding campaigns, your balls are to the wall. You are going down to the wire to make your funding campaign a success. And Walt really made this happen. He went in with everything, and when you put your mind to everything, you really want to get it done, it gets done no matter how crazy the idea is. That's why I really wanted to bring this story to life, you know? The TV deal was a stroke of genius, and it makes me think of other deals like the UFC deal and Spike TV airing The Ultimate Fighter, or Red Bull giving its highly produced media away for free, all which end up being very economically profitable ideas which garner a lot of consumer attention. If you want more of those stories, make sure you follow me on X. But the morale for today's story: not all crazy ideas are great, but all great ideas are crazy. I love talking about these stories. Alright, peace, and see you on the next video.